welcome to this session on CDIO skills. My name is Johan Malmqvist. I'm going to be the chair of this session. I'm also going to present the first paper, which I have written with Maria Knutsson-Wedel and Mikael Enlund. The organizers are telling me that since we are starting a bit late, everything will be pushed forward 5 minutes so that everyone can also present according to plan in 20 minutes and also be able to shift over to other sessions if they like. So we should start, and I should probably say that you should all help to keep me on time and cut me off when my time is out if I miss that. But our talk is on constructive alignment, and specifically on the application of constructive alignment to degree projects. And is this loaded? It looks like this one is actually, I'm missing a battery. Is there a technician in the room? Okay, so I'll move over here and click instead. No. So, anyway, I suppose that most of you are familiar with the ideas behind constructive alignment by now or by earlier experience, as that for designing a good learning event, thank you, there should be clear goals, there should be appropriate teaching activities, and there should be an authentic assessment that really tests that you are capable to perform the intended learning outcomes. And that Biggs and Tang have been the ones that have promoted this theory, and now it has spread quite a lot over the world. This is the same thing. Build these batteries. Okay, so what about this study then? Well, at the moment, degree projects are very heavily focused in Sweden, and that is mainly driven by a new evaluation system where engineering education and higher education in general will be evaluated to a large extent on the quality of the degree projects that the students perform towards the end of their education. So, in a sense, everyone is working with these questions, trying to improve the quality of those. But at the same time, I don't think there is a general opinion on what constitutes high quality in a thesis, or what are appropriate teaching methods, and what should we assess. So, some elements maybe, but not in full. And at the same time, many people are looking at constructive alignment as a tool for designing courses. And for example, at Chalmers, we have a project that has the goal that making sure that all of our courses are constructively aligned. So the potential here for looking at constructive alignment in the context of the degree project would be that it could improve the quality of such. Can I flip forward?
Yeah, sure.
That works, thank you. So we'll go through this, a bit of background, research approach and questions. We'll make a few observations on the characteristics of degree projects. We'll then discuss the 3 components of constructive alignments in the view of degree projects: intended learning outcomes, teaching activities, assessment, and we'll wrap up with the discussion. So to start with the research question, what are we asking ourselves? Well, first is, to what extent is constructive alignment applicable for degree projects? Degree projects, as we will see, are in some ways different from courses that the theory was originally designed for. When we have introduced constructive alignment to teachers, many have had a sort of aha experience. Okay, now I understand what I am doing. So now I can communicate with the student, and now I can rethink my assessment, right? But can we transfer that aha experience to degree projects? And then fundamentally, is this a tool that can help us make our degree projects have a higher quality? Why or why not? And we have two sources for our study. We're looking at various kinds of documentation of the Swedish government regulations. What does the Swedish government say about degree projects in general? What do we want? And we looked at university guidelines from Chalmers and other places, and what are university writing, what are their rules, what are their assessment criteria. And we have also interviewed a number of faculty at Chalmers, mainly from the sort of wide area of mechanical engineering, materials, applied mechanics, product development, production, in order to get a view on what is the actual practice of, so what are teachers actually doing when they supervise degree projects. So what can you say? Well, the Swedish context degree projects are independent works, which means that they are sometimes and quite frequently done in pairs of two, but that the independence is still something that is pointed out as a key quality or key characteristic of them. It can be of a bit different sizes, typically 15 ECTS for a quarter of a year for a bachelor thesis. For a master's thesis it could be 30, that is a half year of studies, or even a full year of studies, 60 ECTS. And if we look at it and we interview and we say, and also in the various kinds of discussions we had, the first word that comes up is variation. Right? Well, degree projects are so different, and there you can point out some of the different kinds of variation. Variation of task. Is it a design project? Is it a simulation project? Is it an experimentation project? Or variation in purpose? Should it fulfill the program's goals? Should it solve some industry problem? Should it be a test employment for the person who runs it? Or should it demonstrate that you can write a scientific paper so you can get into grad school somewhere else? So there can be a lot of different purposes or high-level purposes. We also found that there's a lot of variation in the attitude towards teaching. Okay, some would say that, well, this is really a large exam. We shouldn't teach anything new, and at least I should not teach anything new. It's up to the student to take care of that. Others would say that, well, this is something that we need to work with and sort of come in and do some supported lectures if they say that, well, somebody doesn't know a particular simulation technique or whatever. And then there's a variation of, there's some opinions from the academic examiner, which may or may not be the same as the industrial supervisor. So there can be a variation on how you see the goals and the teaching and so forth between the different people involved in the same project. Variations in scope, right? Some will say that it has to do with deepening the subject knowledge, as sort of that is what the purpose is. Or you can say that, well, this is something where you can also develop some professional skills. From writing communication, from presenting, for looking at immaterial property rights and so forth, depending on how you want to work with it. And this variation is perhaps also visible if we took a look at a couple of examples of degree projects where students will work with design, survey literature and interview people, make experiments, do finite element modeling, select materials, develop and implement the finite element formulation, do stochastic finite element analysis. So there's a lot of different things going on. And you got to ask yourself, is this really the same intended learning outcomes? Should we use the same teaching approach? Should we use the same assessment formats? So then let's discuss the elements of constructive alignment with this degree project in mind. And intended learning outcomes. Well, we found that you could identify intended learning outcomes at least on 3 different levels for degree projects. There is a need for some that are university-wide, saying, well, the degree project at Chalmers should develop these intended learning outcomes, necessary for enabling some student mobility from different departments, necessary for linking to those governmental regulations against which will we be evaluated, and if we don't do that, we might get punished in the evaluation. But you can also say that there should be program-specific ones. Okay, some master programs would be more research-oriented and have higher requirements on that. Others might be more product development-oriented and have a different intended learning outcomes. And finally, you could say that, well, there should be intended learning outcomes also on the level of the individual projects, contextualized, sort of selecting or weighting of general goals. Maybe for one goal there is a project, there is a goal in design, another in experimentation, a third in simulation. And there's also the aspect that the student can take responsibility for defining its learning needs. Students will arrive to this course with very varying pre-knowledge, right? The learning outcomes should, intended learning outcomes should take that in consideration as well. So you can work with these three levels. And then we looked at the teaching practices, interviewing faculty, mostly the sources. And we say that one of the challenges that the teaching text is done not only by the academic but also by the industrial supervisor. And then they sometimes have different goals and attitudes towards that. There is a variety in projects which challenges the teacher's knowledge. Essentially, if you're a teacher, someone comes with a degree project, can you supervise this? Well, sometimes it's sort of fits your profile, sometimes it does not, but you need to do it anyway. There's also a significant variation in pre-knowledge. Could be at the subject matter, could also be at the sort of with professional skills, writing or presentations. Sort of also challenges what you do in terms of teaching. At Chalmers there is little or no supervision training. Basically you learn it by as you go along and sink or swim or hopefully get better over time. But there is no explicit training in this at Chalmers, I should say. And there is this very important word of independence. In Sweden it's not really called degree project, it's called självständigt arbete, emphasizing the independence to a very high degree. So one goal should be to teach independence, and that sort of some teachers would interpret that well, the students should do the job entirely on their own. Then you have proven that you can be independent. And other ones have a more formative structure. And you can ask yourself, is a good thesis with much help always worth a better grade than a not so good with little help? So to wrap up then, or maybe we should do this one instead. We asked the faculty what they felt was good quality in a thesis and came up with these 5 or so things. It should demonstrate the independence. So, but how do we assess that? Not really assessed in any format that we know of. It should solve the problem at hand, given from industry. If you do it, then okay, that's probably good. They also put forward the problem formulation as a sort of fundament for actually solving the problem, is actually stating it well. Writes a well-structured and written report, reflects on the results in the process. But the challenge is perhaps mostly that so much is focused on the quality of the written report, right? A lot of supervision or comments on it takes into consideration language details. So perhaps the written qualities have a much higher weight in the overall assessment of the degree project than the actual result or the actual learning of subject content. And that might be something that needs to be discussed further. So if we just put on the last slide then and ask ourselves this question again: how can constructive alignment for thesis projects contribute to higher quality? Well, we think that that could be done if we work actively with contextualizing the learning outcomes so that it can force students to take a bit more responsibility for their learning, discuss the aspect of independence. It could force the program to clarify how does the program prepare for doing a good high-quality thesis. So that line of thinking may not be so prominent in our program designs today. It enables the planned integration of teaching and learning of specific professional skills, whatever they may be. And finally, a discussion of constructive alignment in the context of the degree project could bring out a discussion on how to balance the sort of implicit weight of the written quality of the report and other aspects such as the quality of the solution and the independence of the degree project work. So do I have a question for
yes.
time for one question? Two questions, yes.
Peter Kellersen from DTU. I was a member of a group who made learning objectives, generic learning objectives for the degree project here at DTU to ensure that the outside knew what was a project and the external examiners new employees coming in, they didn't know what's the standard here.
Yeah.
And I also feel that generic learning objectives is quite important to also to learn the teachers that, I mean, there might be teachers who are more interested in the data than that the student use a lot of time of producing data and not on evaluating, and because this teacher is gonna use these data in some kind of a project, you know, and they're gonna do the perspectives and things like that.
Yeah, I agree that university-wide learning outcomes must be there for the links that you've said, but we also, when we have sort of presented our version of those to our departments, there's immediate reaction. For example, from the people who are research-oriented, they say, well, you know, new knowledge does not emerge in a degree project. So I'm quoting someone here, I'm not saying that this is so or so. So they say, well, we cannot have a statement that includes new knowledge, because that would not fit our subject. Because in our subject you have to sort of study more in order to be able to produce new knowledge. And then you have some other one who says that, well, these are too research-oriented. And in our degree projects, you solve the industrial problems, you don't do research, etc. So they don't fit that program either. So there's always a compromise there in doing that general statement of intended learning outcomes.
I can send you the DTU version, then you
yes,
can come
I'd be
in
very interested in building up our comparison base of that.
I think that what we agreed to in the end, that we need all three levels, but to do constructive alignment, the contextualized are very important.
And we are going to continue that work in the fall, I hope, with some ideas on how can you contextualize and then test them in some degree project perhaps next spring and see if what are the effects of doing that.
Rick Sellens, Queens in Canada. I think when we do final degree projects, we need to accept that there's going to be a level of diversity and that not all students will have all outcomes. And we may have a core set of outcomes that we're looking for all students to get, but other projects will have different focus. And I hope the individual supervisors will be pursuing their individual outcome objectives, if not formally, at least in a practical sense, so that some students will come away with different things from a final project than others. And I think that's a strength.
Yeah, that's something that we also are trying to discuss in our sort of university and program contextualized ones, taking into account the variation and having an explicit discussion of what the variation in this particular project means, so that you have something that is operational and supportive of the individual project. Okay, so thank you for listening, and we are here if you want to